In the second part of today's video, I want to talk about some of the very practical applications that we have for your MPA data. So I'll be talking about some of our data fields, including time to exhaustion and recovery. I'll talk a little bit about mean maximal power and what we mean by that. I'll also talk about some of our Garmin-specific data fields that we've developed, including the popular Segment Hunter and the What's My FTP data field. Lastly, I'll spend a couple of minutes explaining Xert SMART workouts and how SMART intervals work. And I'll show you why they're different or perhaps better than workouts that you've performed in other fitness platforms. Throughout the Mastering Xert videos, I've emphasized that only Xert can calculate and display your MPA data, and that we can even do this for you in real time. However, I'd like to build upon this concept and show you that Xert is even smarter than that. Xert knows how long you could hold 400 watts or 600 watts, and that those values will change as you fatigue and as you recover. To demonstrate this, I'll be using the time to exhaustion and time to recovery data fields. Those of you with Garmin devices can download this and install it from the ConnectIQ store. I'll be using screenshots from an Edge 1030 device to demonstrate the data field as well as explain the information that it provides. Starting off with time to exhaustion, as the name implies, this data field tells us how long you can hold a particular power output before you become limited by your MPA. And time to recovery tells us how long of riding at a particular power output it will take for your MPA to recover. In this example on screen here, we can see that for this athlete in their current MPA and fitness signature, that they would be able to hold 600 watts for 1 minute and 1 second. For time to recovery, the data field is showing 0, so we know this athlete is currently fully recovered. But what happens to this data field when your MPA changes? I've now reduced this athlete's MPA by approximately 100 watts, so perhaps they did a couple hard efforts above threshold trying to hang with their buddies on the group ride. What we'll see now below is that this reduction in MPA also affects their ability to hold 600 watts. So now their time to exhaustion at 600 watts is only 36 seconds instead of 1 minute and 1 second. We'll also see that the time to recovery data field has gone up, indicating that it will take this athlete 5.5 minutes of riding at 100 watts for their MPA to recover. And as this athlete's MPA continues to decrease, so as you become more fatigued, the time to exhaustion at efforts above threshold is going to decrease. And Xert can calculate this and update it in real time with extreme precision. So what we'll see actually is as this athlete's MPA gets closer and closer to 600, this data field will actually count down towards 0. And right now it's showing as 0. So we know that this athlete will actually reach, well, their MPA will reach 600 watts in the next second. So Xert can calculate and show you this with extreme accuracy. And if this athlete were to continue holding an effort above threshold and bring their MPA below 600 watts, the data field will actually go negative, indicating your MPA is below 600 watts. You can't hold 600 watts at all. As you might have guessed, or as you might be able to guess, as your MPA recovers, this data field will change once again. So as you start riding easy and your MPA goes back up, the time to exhaustion part of the data field will start counting up as well. You'll be able to hold 600 watts again. And as you recover, the time to recovery part of the data field is going to decrease as you recover more and more. Hopefully that makes sense. Now, there's one more metric that I'd like to discuss. It's not available in the Garmin ConnectIQ data field, but it is available in the Android EBC app. And it is mean maximal power, which we abbreviate as MMP. You'll see it in this data cell here. And what this data field is telling us is the highest average power that you could sustain for a particular duration. So for the screenshot on screen here, this data field here is telling us that the highest average power that this athlete could hold for 3 minutes is 379 watts. So if they were to go hard for 3 minutes at 379 watts, by the end of that effort, their MPA would be all the way down to 379 watts. So this data field can be very helpful to indicate essentially how hard you could go for a given amount of time. And what I'd like to do is quickly demonstrate how your mean maximal power will change as you fatigue and as you recover. I'll start by explaining what happens to mean max power when you ride hard above threshold. Notice from the EBC app on screen here that this athlete is pushing hard above threshold and burning through their HIE on the outside of the rainbow gauge. Since HIE influences our ability to push above threshold, as it gets used up here, you'll notice that the mean max power in the bottom right hand corner continues to decrease. So this athlete is becoming weaker. And the opposite is true when you begin to recover. So after a hard effort and as you pedal below threshold, your HIE will begin to replenish. And as that HIE is replenished, you'll notice mean max power in the bottom right hand corner is going to start increasing again. This intuitively makes a lot of sense. Next up, we have the Xert Segment Hunter. This is a data field that we developed specifically for Garmin Edge devices. And just as before, you'll find this data field from the Garmin Connect IQ store. As the name suggests, the idea behind this data field is to help you hunt for personal records or king or queen of the mountain efforts on your favorite Strava segments. The way that this data field works is essentially to apply your mean maximal power in a meaningful way. The data field will generate a target power, which is essentially the highest mean maximal power that you can achieve for the remaining duration of a Strava segment effort. Not only will the data field generate a target power, but it's actually going to update that target power in real time based on how you're performing. Just like we've done with our MPA and power data fields, we've also color-coded this data field so you can see how you're performing on your Strava segment with a quick glance, and you can keep your eyes on the road during that segment effort. What I'd like to do next is quickly walk you through the user interface and show you how this data field works. As you approach one of your starred Strava segments, the Xert Segment Hunter will provide a 5-second countdown before entering into the hunt mode. I'm going to quickly pause this demonstration so I can walk you through the user interface. Along the top half of the data field, you'll see a variety of colors. These correspond to your actual power relative to the target. The gray color indicates that you are well below the target power. The blue color indicates that you're only slightly below the target power. And in general, this is okay if you have some downhills or a tailwind on your segment effort. The green color indicates that you are more or less right on target or right equal to your target power, and that you're optimally pacing your segment effort. The purple color indicates that you're riding slightly above your target power. This is generally okay if you have some climbs or some slight headwind during your segment effort. Lastly, the red color indicates that you are well above your target power and that you're fatiguing much faster than the segment hunter would like you to. In general, if you see red, you'll want to back off a little bit. Now, what I'm going to do next is resume playing, and I want you to pay special attention to the target power. Notice here that the target power is changing. As our athlete rides in the purple region, they're fatiguing a little bit faster than the data field would like. And so the segment hunter will update that target power second by second based on how you're performing. Along the bottom part of the data field, you'll notice a horizontal bar which indicates how much time is remaining in your segment effort. It also displays how much distance is left in your segment effort. Upon completion of your segment hunt, the segment hunter will provide a hunt report, indicating your targeted time as well as your actual completion time. I also want to quickly highlight the What's My FTP data field that we developed specifically for Garmin devices. Once again, you can find this from the Garmin Connect IQ store. This data field aims to answer the question, what's my FTP? And it does this by calculating an FTP value on the fly during your activities. Now, what's so cool or unique about this data field is that there's no formal structured FTP test. You don't have to ride for 20 minutes or 8 minutes or do a ramp test. Instead, you can simply install this data field onto one of your Garmin profiles and then head out on that group ride or a hard solo ride or perhaps a Zwift race. This data field will use the power data from your rides and calculate an FTP value. The data field will start with a relatively low value, and the longer or the harder that you're able to ride will cause the FTP estimation to go up. When you're unable to push the FTP value any higher, you've arrived at your FTP estimation. I'd like to quickly point out that the FTP value estimated by this data field isn't associated with the data in your Xert account, so sometimes there can be a couple of watts discrepancy between the two. That's perfectly normal. I'd also like to point out that you can improve the estimation of your FTP by performing a couple of short all-out sprints after you've installed this data field into one of your Garmin profiles. I'd like to wrap up this section of today's presentation on applied MPA by talking about Xert SMART workouts and SMART intervals. To get started, by SMART workout, we simply mean that some aspect of that workout is going to be unique to your fitness signature. So one SMART workout will be a little bit different depending on every single athlete's fitness signature. Within many of our SMART workouts, we also have SMART intervals. These are intervals that adapt on the fly, second by second, as you progress through the workout. And there's two main types of SMART intervals. We have SMART power intervals, where the intensity, the target power, is going to adjust in real time, and this SMART duration intervals, where the actual length of the interval will shorten or lengthen depending on how you're performing the workout. The first type of SMART power interval I'd like to discuss we call XSSR intervals. These intervals provide the iconic curvilinear shape found in many of the Xert workouts. And you can see them very clearly here in the SMART Closer 170 workout. I want you to look closely at the 5-minute high intensity interval here, and you'll notice how the target power for this interval matches the depletion of MPA. So although these intervals might start at a relatively high intensity for you, they're going to taper off closer towards your threshold as you progress through the interval. So although the intervals might look rather intimidating, you can be confident that Xert is going to keep this workout achievable for you. We can also use these XSSR intervals for recovery intervals. And once again, you'll notice that the target power for this interval will closely match the recovery of your MPA. So after the hard 5-minute effort, the recovery interval will start relatively easy, and as your MPA recovers, the target power will gradually increase. The second type of SMART power interval uses your MPA data to dynamically adjust the target power of an interval in real time. For this reason, these SMART power intervals work incredibly well with Xert's mixed mode workouts. I have an example of a mixed mode workout on screen. And what we mean by mixed mode is that some of the intervals in the workout will be performed in erg mode, while other intervals will be performed in slope mode. So you'll need to use your gears and cadence to hit the power targets. In the example I have on screen here, the Dirty Little Secret workout, all of the intervals in blue will be controlled by your smart trainer automatically in erg mode, while the red sprint intervals here, you'll need to use your gears and cadence to hit those sprint targets. Now, this is where the smartness of Xert kicks in. Following that first 20-second sprint effort, Xert will dynamically adjust the intensity of this recovery interval, and it will allow you to recover just in time for the second sprint interval. And once again, depending on how you perform in that second sprint, Xert will dynamically adjust the recovery interval following that. And it does this using your MPA and allowing your MPA to reach a certain level before the next sprint. I'll show you how this works in just a little bit. The last type of Xert SMART interval I'd like to discuss are Xert SMART duration intervals. And as the name suggests, These work not by adjusting the intensity of an interval, but rather by lengthening or shortening it, depending on how you're performing. To demonstrate this, I have the SMART Purple Rain variable duration workout on screen. And what I want you to notice is that the recovery intervals after all of the sprints in this workout are at a set and fixed intensity. So the way that this workout will work is not by adjusting the intensity of these recovery intervals, but rather by adjusting the duration. So the recovery intervals will either shorten or lengthening using your MPA and allowing it to recover to a particular value before starting the next sprint. Now, because these intervals use a fixed target power and instead will adjust the duration, this makes SMART duration intervals excellent for outdoor rides, since they'll be able to accommodate traffic or hills that you might run into while doing your workouts outside. What I'd like to do next is quickly demonstrate how some of these SMART intervals adapt in real time. I wanted to conclude our section on SMART workouts and intervals with a quick demonstration that shows you how Xert dynamically adjusts your workouts in real time. You might have never noticed it before. To demonstrate this, I'll be using the Dirty Little Secret workout, which, as I mentioned before, is a mixed mode workout. So all of the intervals in blue will be controlled automatically in erg mode, and I'll need to use my gears and cadence to hit the sprint targets for the red 20-second intervals. The video on screen was recorded using Xert's session player, and I wanted to quickly point out one feature that I found particularly helpful for mixed mode workouts. Along the bottom of the page with the workout overview, the session player will actually display the upcoming target power, duration, and interval type. So for example, I can tell the upcoming interval here is in slope mode. As I resume the video, notice that it takes me a few seconds to get up to the target power. That'll become important a little bit later. But first, I wanted to quickly pause the video, and I want you to notice the target power for the upcoming interval. It's currently displayed at 83 watts. Now, as I resume playing and finish the sprint interval, we'll see what happens. The 83 watt recovery interval is based upon perfect execution of this workout, where my MPA would match the targeted MPA displayed along the bottom in purple. However, as we saw, it took me a few seconds to get up to the target power, so my actual MPA, displayed in blue, didn't decrease quite as much as Xert would have liked. And this is exactly where the smartness of Xert kicks in. In order to account for this difference, Xert's going to dynamically adjust the recovery interval up or down. And in fact, if we look in the top left-hand corner, you'll see that the intensity has already been updated from 83 up to 99 watts. And Xert is going to continue doing this second by second in order to allow my MPA to recover the perfect amount before that next 20-second sprint interval. Hopefully this short demonstration gives you some appreciation behind how smart Xert intervals are, as well as how they can be powerfully used as part of mixed mode workouts.